My name is Kishan Patel. I'm a software engineer at Slack, and I also lead the CMU TEBA community. CMU TEBA's mission is to build a strong CMU community within the Bay Area where alumni are connected to the people, resources, and opportunities that they need to succeed and thrive. This event is the third of our speaker series, and we also host a variety of other initiatives, including hikes, happy hours, as well as a community just for our founders. We also recently launched a new Slack community, which has now reached up to close to 500 CMU alumni. So this is a great place to go online and engage with other alumni. There's always a lot going on, so please make sure to sign up for the CMU TEBA mailing list if you haven't already, as well as join the Slack. So for logistics, we're going to have two talks tonight, one by Raj and one by Chris. They're each going to give their own talk, and then we'll bring them both back up on stage for Q&A from the audience. Before we start, I would like to thank the CMU TEBA board. We have a dedicated board of 7 CMU alumni who work really hard behind the scenes to put this event together and drive the community forward. So if you're on the CMU TEBA board, can you please raise your hand and let's give them a round of applause. Right there, Rachel in the back, and Stella in the back. We also would like to thank our volunteers, as well as Playground Global for hosting us tonight. Without them, this event wouldn't have been possible. So let's also give them a round of applause. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Sasha, who will say a few words about Playground Global.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, we're very excited to host you guys here. We should thank Rachel, actually, who worked with us here up until a few months ago. Left us for San Francisco, but thank you for bringing your community here. We really like having amazing people from all different companies in the Bay Area come learn about our space. So I just want to quickly tell you a little bit about who we are, what we do, and how amazing the space is. I'm an operating partner here. Before Playground, I ran engineering at Cruise Automation. I'm also currently on the advisory board of Zoop, so I have a lot of actually connections to the AV space, so I'm really excited about it, hearing the talks and what you guys are going to discuss. Playground is a venture fund, limited partners like SoftBank, Google, HP, and so forth. We're also like a nerd theme park. If you walked around, it's really amazing. Our labs are fully staffed, fully equipped for quick prototyping. We have the machine lab with additive manufacturing, 5 degrees of freedom, CNC machines, 3D printers. We have electrical labs, optical labs that our startups use to accelerate their prototyping development with access to experts in the field to basically help them, with whatever they're working on. Currently, we have about 11 or 12 startups based here. It's optional for a company we invest in. They're welcome to start here when it's 1, 2, 5 people, whatever it is, but they grow up and move out like children, and then the next group moves in. But we support them whether they're here, whether they're elsewhere. Our portfolio consists of hardware companies, software companies, healthcare companies, and kind of everything in between. We have a quantum computing company, a next generation hardware accelerator company for machine learning. Some of the companies you might have seen or know about, like Nirvana Systems, one of our early exits that was bought by Intel, AI acceleration. We have Agility Robotics. If you guys seen, especially if you're in the AV space, there was a video published by Ford with this two-legged biped robot comes out, walks across the lawn, crosses some toys, climbs on a porch, drops off a package, walks back. Well, that robot is one of our portfolio companies called Agility Robotics. We have one of their robots here. It's called Digit. It's really amazing. What's amazing about that robot, you might have seen Boston Dynamics robots, for example. They run for 20 minutes, super loud and clunky. These guys can stand still, balance themselves on any kind of terrain for 8 hours, or they can walk for 5 hours. If you see how tiny the body is, that's all has to do with the materials and the type of design, basically reclaiming energy from every step, how kinetic energy works and bouncing back. And because every step is a fall that accumulates energy and then releases it. It's just a mind-blowing technology how those guys built this robot and all the things it can do. That's about it. If you have any other questions about Playground, I'm around. We love having you here. Do come for our events. We have a quarterly event called RoboChat. Instead of fireside chats, we do RoboChats because that's what we're experts at. Just last week, we had Rodney Brooks speak at one of our events. If you don't know who Rodney Brooks is, he's just mind-blowing, accomplished roboticist, founder of iRobot. I'm sure half of you have Roombas. So he's the guy behind that. His current company is called Robust AI. They're actually based here. So I'm always starstruck when Rodney walks by my desk, but that's the kind of talent we have actually in the room here. It's just, incredible what all the companies do and, who the people are. So that's it, on with your show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sasha, and Playground Global. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Raj Kapoor. Raj is the Chief Strategy Officer for Lyft, as well as the Head of Business for Lyft's self-driving division. He also serves as a board advisor for ClassPass and adventure advisor at Mayfield Fund. Prior to Lyft, he was the co-founder and CEO of both Snapfish, acquired by HP in 2005, and FitMob, acquired by ClassPass in 2015, as well as managing director at Mayfield Fund. Raj holds a Bachelor in Mechanical Engineering and Robotics from Carnegie Mellon University and an MBA from Harvard Business School. Please join me in welcoming Raj.
Okay, everyone can hear me? How's everyone doing? Good. Awake, alive? Yeah. This is like the comic where Carnegie Mellon takes over Silicon Valley because of self-driving and robots. It's finally our time to eclipse Stanford. How many people? Yeah! Watch out. It's the Stanford of Pittsburgh. So how many people here work in self-driving? Oh my God, there's like nothing I have to say. You guys are going to know more than me. It's going to be really boring for you. No, I'm not going to get into the technical details because you all will outshine me. But what I will do is give you some context about why and where the future's going. But before I do that, I thought I'd talk a little bit about the little journey to get here, because you're all on a journey. Some of you started off fairly new from Carnegie Mellon, 2018. I think two of you in the back there, at least I know. I'm a 1992 fossil, so I've been around for a long, long time. But it's been quite a journey. And he mentioned I've been an entrepreneur. First company I started totally failed, sold it for 25 cents to the dollar, bought it back, and then it was a good exit to HP. Then I was a VC for 7 years. 4 out of those 7 years, I didn't really know what I was doing. The last 3 years, I still didn't know what I was doing, but I think I did the right thing, and then I left. And then I started another startup because I'm a glutton for punishment called FitMob, which is a fitness marketplace, which then we ended up realizing that we need to merge with our competitor. And even though she went to MIT, I did it. And now it's ClassPass, and it's doing well, and blah, blah, blah. But the genesis behind all of this was showing up as a total nerd. Who here was pretty introverted and nerdy when they were growing up before they went to Carnegie Mellon? Oh, come on, this bullshit. All right. So I was a nerd, and I didn't know much of anything. I went to Carnegie Mellon. I was like, oh my God, there's people that are in art and architecture. It's one of the cool things about Carnegie Mellon. It's so diverse. And Pittsburgh was like the mecca because I came from Allentown. Holy shit, this is awesome. I love it here. But what Carnegie Mellon, I came in because I wanted to build rockets, and then I realized Elon Musk doesn't exist, so that's not going to happen. So I ended up going and doing field robotics and mechanical engineering, but really what I fell in love there was entrepreneurship. So I became president of the Entrepreneur Club. I started a bartending school because I wanted to find a cheap way to drink, and it didn't work, it failed, that was my first failure. Then I started a student employment agency, understood the power of the marketplace, that was kind of cool. Then I got these job offers, most of which you get are boring, like working in a chemical plant in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So I worked at a phone company, and they said, do you want to do capital budgeting or do you want to do information services? And this was in 1992. I didn't know what information services was, but I knew that capital budgeting sounded really lame. So I said no. And I ended up being lucky to be on the kind of the forefront of what was happening with the internet stuff. And Carnegie Mellon was pivotal because I met a professor named Jack Roseman. and he was my entrepreneurship professor. And he really took me out of my engineering skin into the skin of being an entrepreneur. So I credit Carnegie Mellon not just for the technical education, which I don't remember or use differential equations anymore at all, but I credit it for the inspiration that I had from other students, the inspiration that I had from my professors like Jack, that were amazing. And there's a lot more to the story, but I want to talk about this stuff, so I'm not going to go into the detail. If you want, grab me afterwards, get me a glass of tequila, I don't like beer, and we'll sit down and talk about post-Carnegie Mellon. The one thing that took away was that I did the entrepreneurship, VC thing, entrepreneurship, and I really felt like I wanted the next thing, a sense of purpose. What I feel super passionate about, this is the why for me. In every job that you have, you should think about what your why is. Someone says why, you should be able to answer it in a sentence or two. My why is climate change, which is not necessarily related to self-driving cars, but I'll explain why. I think it should be, and I think it will be. But for me, climate change is the biggest issue that our planet is facing. It is the proverbial frog in boiling water. I wanted to do something about it. On a separate tangent, I created a Facebook game that didn't go anywhere around climate change, so I figured I should do something real. And what I saw so when I was a VC, I invested in Lyft in a Series A, and it was called Zimride, and it was a carpool kind of matching service, nothing to what it was today. But I really liked it because it brought efficiency to transportation, and it brought less cars on the road because we matched people that are going long distance. The issue there was long distance didn't matter, it was short distances that really matters, which is why Lyft pivoted. But what I see is that what I noticed before joining Lyft was that there are going to be 2.5 billion people moving into cities over the next 15 years. There is no way that the existing transportation system that we have will accommodate this growth in cities. And with cities brings the opportunity to have a better efficient use of resources because people are very dense together and you can have new forms of transportation that are there. So I felt like the automobile is broken and we need to figure out a different way. And when I dug into it, transportation is now the #1 cause of carbon emissions. So it felt like a great calling to call up my friend Logan and say, hey, let's go solve this, not because I wanted to join Lyft. I was thinking about doing some crazy VC fund or a new startup. He's like, you're an idiot, come and join me. So that's what brought me to Lyft. As Chief Strategy Officer, but that's just a brouhaha title. Really what I'm trying to do is to make us have an impact on congestion and most importantly, emissions. And so with that, I'll jump into it. Transportation is a really amazing, interesting thing. Most technology takes an extremely long time to disseminate over the years. Now, of course, it's easy. There's networks and social networks and blah, blah, blah. But look at this. This was, in 1900, the Easter Day Parade back in New York City. And it's mostly, if you notice, those are horse and buggies that are everywhere. And transportation is so vital, so important to everyone that when something is innovative that happens in transportation, it rapidly picks up even without social networks in those days. So you can see, though, there's one car that's there in 1900. Fast forward 13 years, which today is like 3 months. So 13 years, this is what the same city looks like, the same street on Easter Parade, except one horse and buggy that made it out there. So never had before has such a rapid transformation occurred, and it happened at an unprecedented scale. With the Model T, 15 million produced by 1927. So clearly this is an important invention, the car, the automobile. And people loved it. They could move around a lot faster. And basically for the same cost, you got 6x the speed and range. As being a VC for 7 years, one of the things you look for is a step function change, not an incremental change, but a step function disruptive change. This is it. This was the automobile. So happy ending. We're all done, right? Maybe. So the auto industry spends about $44 billion in marketing each year. The average American owns 2+ cars. And so people flooded their driveways with cars. Cities were built around cars. The highway system came about. All these things seem good, but we are in a situation now where it's not working. So 76%, this is what drove me to invest in Zimride, which is now Lyft. 76% of US commuters drive to work alone, a very inefficient use of the 4 to 6 seats that are in the vehicle. 14% of a city like LA is now parking. And it's so damn expensive to live there. So that also is a head scratcher. And then, of course, you look at what happens. We talk a lot about the fatalities that occur. 94% of accidents are due to human error. Texting, impaired driving. But really, look at the number of people that die from vehicle emissions. This is if you live near a highway, so that you contract some sort of diseases around the respiratory system. It's greater than the number of accidents that are caused, that are there. And economically, it really doesn't make sense. So the average person is spending about $737 a month. That's about $9,000+ a year. And it is the second largest expense after housing. So you spend more on transportation as an average American than you do on food. And the kicker is you're utilizing it 4% of the time. So 96% of the time on average, the vehicle is sitting unused. So for an entrepreneur that looked at music and said, I can move music to a service, because how often do you use that CD that's sitting there? Movies, same way, all sorts of entertainment. This is staring you in the face saying, look, this has got to change and make something different that happens. So, sorry for the logo, but I really do believe that we are on a precipice. It's not going to happen right away, but we are on the verge of the end of car ownership. It really just doesn't make sense. It used to be that people tied their identity, who they are, their status in society by the car that they drive. And if you're over the age of 40, you may still do that. But if you're under the age of 25, I would argue you probably don't. And a record number of people are not getting their driver's license that they were before. So we're seeing all the stars that are starting to align. And what I think the opportunity is to take this potpourri of services and things that you have to buy and put it into a subscription plan, very similar to what you have for your cell phone, very similar to how you consume music today as well. So we think you should consume transportation on a per-use basis. It's a much more efficient use of resources, and it's not just, it's a better way, it's the only way, because we will not be able to accommodate the 2.5 billion people moving into cities over the next 15 years otherwise in doing it. And it's a big opportunity. Why are there literally 100+ companies, maybe now it's like 85 because some died, pursuing the autonomous space? Because if the market size is 1 trillion, why shouldn't a bunch of VCs write billion-dollar checks? Because if you look at the math, that's what they do for like, a $500 million market, they'll write a $5 million check. So it makes sense to be putting the enormous amount of capital because the opportunity is so big that's being faced. And it's not just autonomous, again, I'll paint a bigger picture. So we think the solution is really a combination of things. And let's think about the city dweller again, not the person living in Palo Alto. The city dweller hopefully has a reasonable public transit system. Unfortunately, this isn't the case in most American cities, but it should change. Look at micromobility. How quickly has that grown? I mean, literally 2-3 years ago, there's no concept of scooters except razors. And now all of a sudden, you trip over one when you're walking down the street in every global city, not just in American cities that are there. And that's because the demand for trips. So I think about 60% of trips are typically under 2 miles or so if you live in the city. So it really makes a lot of sense to engage in micromobility for that reason. Of course, bikes, too. We were able to buy the largest bike share in the US, and so we're just rolling out electric bikes. Of course, there's some battery problems, but we'll get over those, and we'll get them out there. And then, Lyft, Uber, whatever it is, the rideshare driver is a piece of it, and the AV is a piece of it. But the entire solution is what's important. So at Lyft, we don't call ourselves a rideshare company anymore. It's about transportation. It's about how does the consumer get there from point A to point B. If they say they want to go somewhere, we're going to point out the fact that they could probably get there cheaper on public transit. They should do it. It may be 12 minutes more than if they got a rideshare driver, or it could be maybe 20 minutes more than they got a scooter, depending on the traffic, all sorts of things. So let them make the trade-off and come up with it, but there's no reason to own a car. I think the statistics are that in a city like New York, 67% of the population, it makes no economic sense given what they commute and do to own a car. Now, New York is extreme, but those economics are now starting to seep into every city that's there. So we're really on to something big. So why does AV matter? AV matters in isolation, I will argue. So autonomous is not enough. And this is where I'm going to talk most of my argument about, which is that what we need to have is connected, shared, electric, and autonomous. Without this, you have emissions problems. Without shared, you may have more cars if they're cheap enough on the road. That doesn't solve congestion that's there, that we have an issue with. And of course, connected so that you can actually have an efficient use of those resources that are there. So I'll go through each of these, but for consumers, there's been some crazy statistics. This is right down the street, Stanford Rethink X, I think is some sort of think tank, and they said, I mean, I wish this is true, but it's pretty aggressive, that 80% of miles can be served by on-demand electric self-driving fleets. And once that occurs, we see that shift, it's bigger than a Republican tax refund check that comes into every household. And I'm not trying to take sides. But transportation could potentially be 10x less expensive in this future, but not just with autonomous. It has to be all of those things that are there. So clearly the connected side of things is pretty obvious. It's growing. People like it, so I won't spend much time on that. Shared. So the interesting about shared is that we started this, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago. People said, no, you're never going to share a ride with someone. It's never going to happen. And it was really hard initially because if you don't have density, you don't get the match. And then are people going to really use it? Like they're paying roulette every time they open share. So what we had to do is to charge people the shared price even though we didn't have a match. But that caused this to go up to the point where now 35% of Lyft's rides are shared. So 2 people that don't know each other are going into a car. And we expect that to be 50% over the next few years. It's super important. So as you get more and more people on the network solves the problem of having that density and making it so that you don't have to necessarily, you can share the ride, you can share the fee that's there. What we noticed also is that when people are paying less, it's about 25 to 30% less, they also have a secondary effect, which is they stop looking at their phone and actually talk to the person that's next to them. And humanity comes back into the equation as well. So that may not be the first reason why people try it, but it becomes a reason why they potentially sustain it too. So I think we're going to move more and more to this shared concept that's there. One other interesting thing here, a shared system that drops 2 people off at exactly the pickup and drop off that they want is actually still inefficient. So what we introduced is this really novel concept called walking. And I don't know if you've opened up Lyft, you'll see Shared Saver is an example of that. We say, hey, if you walk, usually less than 5 minutes to get to the point of pickup or to the drop-off, you can save even more. Because it's basically, now what have we done? We've created virtual bus stops. This is what the bus system should be. Dynamically figuring out where to do pickup and drop-offs and having people walk to get there. So it is kind of a form of public transit that we see. And that's when you can drive the prices down, especially with autonomous and electric, to close to a bus fare. And start to get the economics that you need. That are really important, by the way. Most of poverty is also linked to transportation deserts, where people can't get to jobs in inner cities, as an example. Why electric? Well, it's good for the environment, we know that, but why else? Some of you know this already that are involved in cars, some of you don't. It is a significantly higher life because there's much less moving parts in it. Yes, you may have to swap out batteries, but less than 100 moving parts versus 1,000 plus in an ICE vehicle that's there. And the other piece of it is that it's hard, because if you're only utilizing your vehicle 4%, are you going to pay a premium on the front end to buy an electric car? This is why most Americans haven't bought an electric car. We're utilizing our fleets 60 to 70%. In the autonomous world, I think we could drive to 80% utilization of a car. So now all of a sudden, the upfront investment is actually not that important to us. We're very less sensitive to that. And we also know exactly as a fleet where to put the charging stations because we know what the transportation pattern is. We have all of that data in the city. So we're able to create charging stations that are there. So it's not enough to just say, hey, I've got an autonomous car. I've solved the brain of the car. You need to build charging. You need to build maintenance. You need to build out parking. Because there's going to be a lot of times when you look at the peak size of the fleet, at 4 a.m., where are those cars going to go? They can't deadhead the streets or just go around the east side of Manhattan waiting for rich people to come out. So you have to find a place to put them somewhere. So, and then lower cost. Once you can, the cost of operating is less than half of a car at scale. And so we think it's forget about the environmental reasons, which is why I came. It's the economic reasons that's going to push this forward. So why AV? It may be obvious, but it's useful since a lot of you are working in self-driving. Take a step back and say, why does the consumer care? They care, of course, safety is the first thing that people talk about, but it's also reliability. So ETs will be more precise than pre-positioning. The wait times are short because we can tell the robots where to go and we know exactly where the demand is going to be coming. And affordability, of course, there you can, as soon as you take that, make it fully driverless, you can bring the cost of transportation down. And we see that people are very sensitive to that. And then there's a consistent experience, and I'll get into this a little bit. We're not going to think about cars the way we did. We're going to think about cabins. What you're going to care about is not if it's a GM or a Ford, no offense if you're an OEM. What you're going to care about is what's my cabin, like you do when you get on an airplane in doing it. Of course, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, and I think Chris will go deep into the autonomy stack and all the hard stuff that's there. But this is a big problem. We've got now 400 people in Palo Alto down the street, Pageable Road, building a full self-driving system. We've got a bunch of cars on the road, doing a bunch of autonomous miles that I can't talk about on a weekly basis. But it involves not just what's in the car, but involves a shit ton of stuff in the cloud too, because the system is constantly learning that's there. So why do we think we're in a good position to do this? Again, I apologize, it's not really a Lyft pitch, but let me just say in general, for a network to get involved in self-driving, I don't think that self-driving is just going to come out in a few years and you're just going to be able to buy a car at the dealer. Because these vehicles can have a limited ODD that's going to be increasing over time, as those who are involved in the industry understand this. So the first application of self-driving technology will in fact be rideshare. And think about it like it's going to be, the way I look at it is like a mobile network. There's 3G and 4G networks, right? There wasn't like a new 4G network that disrupted AT&T and Sprint and Verizon because you needed those 3G, you needed that 3G connectivity because the 4G was spotty for a long time. So you needed a phone that could be able to traverse back and forth. Same thing, you're going to need humans for a very long time. What consumers care about is a 3-minute wait time. If it's 4 minutes, 5 minutes, it sucks. 2 minutes doesn't make much of a difference. 3 minutes is the magic number, is what we found. And to get that 3-minute wait time consistently over the next decade, as we're in this world of hybrid, you need to have drivers too. So that's one. Two is that these drivers, like we bought a company called Blue Vision Labs in London where they utilize the video to capture scenarios. So these drivers are driving real life, not just on a test track. And we're able to look at all the crazy scenarios that are happening. We're also able to then create a histogram of the frequency of those scenarios and help us answer the question, which is a tough one in self-driving, is how safe is safe enough? Well, if you knew what the frequency of scenarios are, you could then say, okay, I'm going to handle 99.998 or 99.91, and then I can rely on the humans to do the other ones and dispatch safely in that case. So we think that that hybrid is going to be important. The other thing that's important is to actually tell the consumer what's going on. So we have now done almost 70,000 rides in Las Vegas with our partner Active, self-driving cars, these BMWs. We also are live with our friends Waymo, some of them here from Waymo in the crowd. And we've learned a couple things. One is when the person comes in, they're like, cool, this is awesome. What the hell is this car doing? So right away they want to know, is the car seeing what I'm seeing? Then the second thing they're thinking through their head is the car doing what I would do? Or at least being better than what I would be as a driver. So you need to give them that situational awareness, which is what we added into the vehicles that are there. So where are we with this? Well, we're not at the stage of technological maturity. We're far from it. This cycle of evolution of the industry is similar in other industries where everything is now vertically integrated. Doesn't mean it's forever going to be that way, but it's the fastest path to get a product to market. And so there is no standards, really, on software. There's no standard map. Everyone has to create their own HD map. There's no standard hardware. And I predict there won't be for a while. Because until people learn about what are the pieces of the stack that are super critical, it's going to be hard to figure out what you outsource. Or if they feel like the time it takes to integrate is longer than the time it takes to build, if I have a lot of resources, which a lot of self-driving companies do, then there's not an incentive to create standards and to create things in components. It will happen, it's just that we're not at that stage. And I think we won't be there for another 5+, 10+ years in doing it. That's my prediction. I talked about this key issue of how safe is safe enough. That's a super important question. We have one way of thinking about it, which is through, again, analyzing the scenarios a Lyft driver sees. But there's lots of ways that you could skin that cat, but no one has come out with a definitive answer. And the government is hoping that companies like us that you're working for will come out with that answer. So when are we going to go to market? We're live now with safety drivers. When does it really start to scale up? Who knows? If I have to throw a number down, I would say, 4 years out. But 4 years feels like the convenient thing to say. It's like it's the time people go to college, so there's no like magic time. Key hurdles. So regulatory. It's not just that the federal laws aren't there. It's that cities think that they should regulate, what states think they should regulate, what mayors think they should regulate. Like everyone is trying to regulate, and people are not quite clear on who's going to do what. We're hoping that the federal government at least regulates safety, and we don't have to create a different car for every city or every state. That would be a nightmare that's there, but that's still open. Unforeseen hurdles, again, a lot of you are involved in this. People don't know what they don't know about scenarios and the complexity of all those scenarios that are there. And then the market, you probably see if you haven't, the vast majority of people, unfortunately, are scared. They're not happy and excited about getting into a self-driving car. Now, what we've seen is that we're getting about a 4.97 out of 5 rating when they step into one of our cars in Las Vegas that's self-driving. They feel really awesome about it, but it's like one of those things, until you try it, it's really scary in doing it. So we have a long way to go there. And we have to prove that we have a statistical safety advantage. Again, there's lots of ways to skin that cat. We won't go into that. So let's talk about some of the other things. So let's assume you have AVs. I think that there's going to be so many second-order effect changes that if you're entrepreneurs, maybe you're working on self-driving systems, but there's so many other opportunities you could be working on as well. So, for example, this is idea of creating this example of a mobile office. And if it's autonomous, you can use all the space inside to be collaborating, innovating, etc. with 5G networks. You have high-speed connectivity wherever you are. Why do we have to have office space anymore? Why is there a concept that we have to have a stationary location? Why can't you live your life like an RV, mobile? Why can't you work mobile? So you start upending and thinking about basic things like offices that there. Of course, everyone talks about, you can get that right now with a driver too, karaoke bar and thing, that's fun. Can the retail come to you so that you don't have to go to it? And then do you rethink the interior so there's a lot more spaciousness? And are people going to say on Lyft, I want a 180-degree client reclining, I need 5.1 channel surround sound, now get me the Lyft in doing it. And it depends on how far you're going, etc. That's there. So beyond self-driving, I mentioned that it's a lot more than just the cars. There's charging, cleaning, parking, storage, maintenance at scale. My prediction is that for the largest networks, we will be the largest parking operators in the country, given the amount of vehicles that we need to have and the off-peak, what they have to do, we have to park them somewhere. But we still won't need as much parking as we have overall because there's too many parking spaces for consumers. Will there be self-driving fast lanes, kind of like slot car going 300 miles an hour down there? That may be an initial way to entice people to drive more safely. Does driving become a leisure activity? If you had a horse, you can take it to a track. So we're not saying driving goes away, maybe just go hang out at the track with the other people that are rich and that can have cars in doing that. And the second order effects are massive. So insurance premiums go really, really low because 94% of accidents are caused by human error. All of a sudden those don't exist, especially when the cars start talking to each other. Auto loans, you're not buying cars anymore. Car sales, you're not buying cars anymore. Rentals, we're already disrupting this space. What's the difference between I'm getting a lift on a mileage basis versus I'm getting a lift on a time basis, where I can use the lift for 3 hours, or 4 hours, or 8 hours? And we've already started to do that. We have consumer car rentals on Lyft now. So I think that that whole business gets upended. Housing, this is a really interesting question. Are people going to move away from the city because the commute is not as costly? Because A, it doesn't cost as much, B, it doesn't cost as much because you can do other things in the vehicle versus just stare at the road. You can sleep, you can eat, you can do work. So I don't know the answer to that one. I hope people move more to cities because that's a better solution for the environment. Parking, we talked about things like service centers. Driver's license. How are we going to identify ourselves? Who cares if we drive anymore? Changes for cities. So I actually think transit, especially high-speed rail, is the best way to get people from point A to point B. They have the location, so it has to be a combination. And I think the autonomous will feed into first mile, last mile, which has been a problem of getting people to use transit as well. The LA said, we're going to lose about $150 million in revenue because people are not going to pay parking fees, they're not going to get citations. And it sounds funny, but that's a real problem because it's funding their schools, it's funding emergency services. So we're going to have to change the way that we tax transportation because you need to keep things like infrastructure, public roads going. And then we talked about infrastructure. So I think that cities have an opportunity to redesign themselves. They redesigned themselves in the first part of the century around cars. Now we have an opportunity to design cities around people. Thank you.
Chris is the co-founder and CEO of Renovo, a Silicon Valley automotive software company focused on building products that enable the global commercialization of level 4 autonomous vehicles. He's built his career taking disruptive technologies to market. His previous roles include pioneering the camera phone at Lightsurf, creating groundbreaking consumer products at IDEO, and building massively scalable global software systems at Verisign. Chris received his degree in mechanical engineering from Carnegie Mellon, where he designed and built autonomous vehicles and exoplanet rovers. Please join me in welcoming Chris.
Okay, awesome. So, Sean, thank you. Thanks to all the organizers today. We're super excited to be here. Real quick question. How many people here are under 30 years old? All right, now raise your hands if you're sad. Keep them up. Keep them up if you're sad that Fry's is closing. Or do you care? So I'm definitely old because it really hurts me. Like when I first came here in '97, I was like, wait, you can go to a place, you can buy a motherboard, you can try it out, and then take it back if it doesn't work. This is great. And I think that doesn't matter to anyone anymore. So, all right, so thanks again for having us here. We're going to talk a little bit about platforms, hit on some of the themes that Raj was talking about, but really what I want to do is meditate a little bit about how when you're disrupting these things, you kind of feel like you know what's going to happen, you sort of think you know what you're going after, but the truth sometimes is very, very different. And the actual winners turn out to be not who you expect them to be, and it's really hard to figure that out when you're in it. Of course, hindsight's 20/20, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Just a little bit intro for my company, Renovo. We build software infrastructure for AVs. We work with both level 2 and level 4 vehicles. Level 2 vehicles really solve the immediate safety issues with people not paying attention and hitting stuff. AAA has some stats, 30 to 40% of fatalities would be solved if we had level 2 ADAS systems. The RAM Corporation did an amazing study about a year ago saying that pushing this stuff out in the market could save as many as 500,000 lives. These are US numbers alone. There's over 1.1 million people killed in road accidents every single year globally. But level 4 brings the economic benefits that Raj was talking about, and it's going to be something that we talk about in this as well. So our software platform allows our customers to develop their technology, to roll it out, and to operate it at scale, and to continuously use the data that comes off these vehicles in real time to validate, to improve, and ultimately to monetize at scale. So it's an exciting space. We're located here in Silicon Valley and love cars. So I graduated in 1996. This is Carnegie Mellon in 1992. Just to embarrass myself, this is me in 1992. I wore a hat because, you know, you're a jerk when you're young. And so I want to point out something kind of cool. I blanked it out. Did you guys know, what was your student ID when you were at Carnegie Mellon? When I was there, it was my social security number. Who put social security numbers on your card? And we showed it to everybody. It's just, anyway. So, but Carnegie Mellon was a place that was filled with contradiction. It was like this amazing space where all this technology was, and then sort of a lot of stupidity, and that was fun, right? As a young person, you got to experiment, you got to kind of explore. We did a lot of explorations. We found the plants, the steam tunnels off of a work belt. Of course, as you all know, the steam tunnels do not exist, and you're expelled if you enter them. And so we totally, totally did not go into the steam tunnels according to the official record. But this is kind of the fun of CMU. Is it was almost like you were hacking the university that you were going to on a regular basis, and whether you're throwing moderns down, architects leave, or whatever it was you were doing to kind of pass the time, CMU was a place that really encouraged independent thinking, and you learned as much from the students as you did from the professors. But just three professors that I wanted to highlight that meant a lot to me when I was there. Glenn Sinclair, who taught us about safety factors by shaking up a soda can and then slowly filing down with sandpaper until it sprayed all over the front few rows, and then measured the thickness so they could figure what the safety factor was. Amazing guy. Tom Shee, who is numerical methods, really brought me together with hardware and software, and a very philosophical, interesting guy. And finally, John Wiss, who we lost this year. John ran the engine laboratory in the mechanical engineering department at Carnegie Mellon, but more importantly, he really got involved with students, sponsoring people to do stuff. He was the sponsor for the SAE Micro Baja, which we did for 4 years. That was an autonomous vehicle competition, which CMU won all 4 years that we were there. And I only found out after about the third year that John was funding it out of his own pocket. And so this is a guy that was just really, really invested in students and helping people learn and explore. And so a great loss, but reminds us of how great people are at Carnegie Mellon. Finally, one other person that I really, really want to highlight, Red Whitaker. We would not have field robotics, probably as a field, certainly not at Carnegie Mellon without this man. An absolute force of nature, created the FRC in this part of the Robotics Institute with the sheer force of his mind, created parts of CMU that were then grafted off by certain self-driving car companies that will remain nameless. But overall, Red was a person that really believed in robotics as a way to transform. And just look at the 2007 DARPA challenge. Selesky, Urmson, Raj, all these people were on his team. So this is we would not be talking about self-driving. Don't kid you. Sebastian Thrun, before he was stolen by Stanford, worked for Red. So this is kind of the godfather of self-driving and field robotics in general. So, and a huge influence on me when I was there. I worked at the Robotics Institute for about 1.5 years, working on exoplanet rovers. But in between robotics and mechanical engineering, which is my degree, I also kind of got drawn in by software. I was CCon in Wien. We used really cool computers like these, the DEC 5200, totally awesome. I may or may not have brought down AFS with a Butler worm at some point in my tenure there. But more importantly, this is where Lycos was built. This is where the originator of Deep Thought was built. This is where, but that's fine. Unfair advantage. That's what entrepreneurship is all about. So. But after this, I really wanted to, after designing other people's products for 4 years, I really wanted to get operational. And so I joined a company that was on top of the O'Neill Surf Shop in Santa Cruz called Lightsurf. Probably a company you've never heard of before. But our CEO invented the camera phone. And this is something that we worked with handset vendors and wireless carriers to popularize. And so that culminated in the launch of the Sanyo 5300, which is the first camera phone in the United States. We did the first video messaging. We did the first inter-carrier. And this was something that we were really proud of, and even though the camera really sucked in the beginning, the first ones were sort of QVGA or VGA, we saw that the spontaneity, the always-on capability, and the ability to share instantaneously was going to transform the phone. We just didn't realize that it was going to continue to transform a lot of other things. And so this grew, made a lot of money for Sprint. We were generating probably about $1 billion a year off this platform for Sprint. We worked with Verizon and a bunch of other carriers globally. And what, of course, happened was that this digital photography, mostly driven by smartphones, or initially flip phones and smartphones, completely destroyed the existing film market. And it's not just, so that kind of ends at 2011. Just some stats right now. Digital is about, there's 1 billion uploads to Facebook and 1 billion uploads to Google every single day. The vast majority of those are from mobile devices. Handsets account for more than 85% of pictures taken, period, globally. There are more people that have never used a camera in their lives that have also used a smartphone. It is essentially dominates everything. About 250 million hours of video taken, and this is more than half of these from mobile. And if you think about the internet is kind of like a giant storage medium for this stuff. And the vast majority of the transmission of the internet is for this stuff. So this was really big, and we thought, this was an impressive business. We sold the business in 2005. Something happened just after that. We thought, hey, this is kind of the end, this is where it's going to go, but this was actually just the beginning, because there was something that had been laying sort of parallel
to this, which was the open standards of the internet. And the mobile networks were not open in 2005. These were walled gardens, used things called WAP and all these horrible things that hopefully you'll never have to think about in your entire life. But here, there was this thing that didn't quite work on a tiny little flip phone, but it worked on this. And all of a sudden, you had this convergence of an open platform that was always on, that had a lot of power and a camera connected to it. And that's when things really changed. And you had journalism, and you had just completely distributed information gathering and sharing. And so when the analysts were looking at this, back in 2005, they were saying, well, is this going to benefit the people that fulfill images and things like that? Is it going to benefit the handset vendors? Is it going to benefit the wireless carriers? Someone's going to win, right? One of these people are going to win. No, they all lost to this. All of the value creation of that. Cell phones, smartphones is a zero margin business outside of Apple. They're the one kind of weird corner of this. And by volume, they're quite small. This is where the actual revenue was created. My company was sold for about $300 million, Instagram for 3 times that, WhatsApp for 16 times that, Snapchat trades at about 22 billion, Twitter over 30. These are the things that actually won. And all the hardware and the networking and the imaging and the algorithms and all that stuff, almost worthless. Completely commoditized. All the value in the information and the ability to share. So this is kind of interesting. And it brings up the question, what the hell does that have to do with self-driving? And so I think Raj painted a really great picture for the ways that self-driving and electrification and connectivity and other technologies are going to transform the infrastructure of transportation. And I think he's absolutely correct. And I agree with his call to do this just to save ourselves from choking ourselves to death in cities. The Rethink X, by the way, if you don't quote Rethink X in a deck on AV, you're losing out. So Tony Seba from Stanford doing some of the greatest thinking on this space. Transportation as a service. This is exactly what Raj was talking about. And when you kind of look at this as a global opportunity, there's 24 trillion passenger miles, about half of that in these big, developed countries. And at 25 cents a mile, it's a $5 trillion opportunity. Just to put that in context, the entire advertising, not Google's online, all of advertising is less than $1 trillion. All of smartphones is less than $1 trillion. So this is why the VCs are going crazy. But that 25 cents is quite interesting because, Uber, I should have done a Lyft logo here, but Uber, $2.50 a mile. When you look at Tony Seba's stuff, the actual transportation goes really, really low. That's his high case. The small case is the costs are under 10 cents. So let's think about that for a second. Like Raj said, the average trip in a big city is somewhere between 2 to 4 miles. By the way, anyone know what the average speed through the core of Manhattan is? 4.9 miles an hour. Isn't that awesome? So what this means is that your trip in Manhattan, let's give you the 4-mile trip, which takes you almost an hour, generates a value of less than $1. Let's think about that for a second. The transportation is less than $1. So who wins in this space? Is it the ride-hailing networks? Is it the manufacturers? Is it the people that own and operate the fleets? I don't know if any of them win. Or a better way to put it is, I don't know if the value creation on that platform is as big as the much larger platform that's being created right now. These things are powerful supercomputers. People say iPhone with wheels. I think it's a little trivial. But think about it. Kilowatts of processing power, hundreds of sensors. All the sensors in your smartphone cost $20. There are thousands of dollars of sensors. There are high-precision cameras and LiDAR, radar, sonar, microphones pointed in all directions outside and inside, looking at everything that's happening 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So let's think about some really interesting things. It knows where you're going. So you're going to go to Home Depot and get a hammer. And remember, your trip costs less than $1. What's Lowe's going to do? They're going to pay for that trip. A keyword on Google, some of them are $50, $60 a keyword. These guys can zero out your transportation for less than $1. So the advertising in the space and what is even the transportation is going to quickly diminish to what is the offer? What is the purpose of the trip? Why are you doing it? When do you need to get there? How much slack time do you have? What do you like, Pete's versus Starbucks? This advertising and demand generation network is going to be off the hook. Your captive content, you're going to spend 30, 40 minutes in this thing, maybe an hour if you're unlucky and in Manhattan going from one end to the other. You better believe People are going to subsidize your trip to get you to try out Netflix, to check out the latest thing on some other content network. This is going to be huge, and it's one of the main reasons why companies like Apple would really care a lot about what the experience inside of an AV is, because their fastest content's the fastest growing segment of all of Apple's revenue today. Why deliver packages when they know where you're going to be? Why not just put the Zappos box? I mean, Amazon's already delivering packages to your own trunk of your car. So why have any infrastructure delivery? If you're doing this, they know where you are, and they can put the things in the car that you're going to go into. Our friend Danny Stillian at IDEO explored, as Raj had in his deck, about what is the workplace. Again, if transportation is $1, and you're sitting in there conducting a meeting. I mean, what's a sort of a WeWork or something like that? $50 an hour, $100 an hour? Remember, the transportation's $1, so that's free. So this is worth way, way more than the transportation itself. And the services you sell on top of this, even more. SoulCycle class costs about $34. Why not do your SoulCycle on your hour-long trip from one end to the other? Why not think about these things as places for wellness and meditation and all sorts of other things? And then one of my favorite ones, Raj is talking about, I touched on this with high-speed lanes. I think there's going to be a really interesting question about asphalt neutrality. What if you can pay to go faster? There are already cities, Singapore, Dubai, and others, that are experimenting with congestion pricing and demand pricing on a per-meter basis. Now, their argument is we can rebalance our networks the same way you do with a digital network by optimally using the circuits. But you can quickly see how this could become an upcharge. And there's already people that are talking about doing this, particularly around big sporting events, all sorts of other things. So this is another area where the revenue generated from upcharging will probably be worth more than transportation. And then finally, probably the most significant upside to this, and the one that gives me the kind of the most interesting thought process, is that these things are like little low-flying satellites. They're always on, and they're always gathering data. Not just gathering data, but they already have image detection and object recognition and image tracking, object tracking systems on board as part of their AV stack. The AV stack subsidizes this massive surveillance system. There's a lot of upside to that. There's also a lot of potential downside to that. And so what we do with these sorts of systems is really important. But you put a few thousand of these in a city like Manhattan, and you basically see the entire city evolve every 10 to 15 minutes. You put 10,000, now you get it every 2 to 3 minutes. So just think about that, right? This is the largest, most sensitive, most data-hungry, and most data-rich IoT network that the world will ever see. There's no amount of Logitech cameras you can stick in windows of your storefront that's ever going to come close to what these systems build. So, huge opportunity, huge questions about privacy, data regulation, things like that. And I think there's probably hundreds of other things. And so that's really what I wanted to talk about today. Is I think it is natural for us to think, who are the existing businesses that will benefit or be disrupted from this platform change? But my point is, I think it's a much larger platform than most people think, and a much larger dislocation of value. So when you think about building your next company, or you think about transportation, I urge you to think beyond just the sort of first order effects here. There are really, really large opportunities to be had. It's going to take a lot of innovation, and the people that own these networks are not going to, kind of open them up and let you do whatever you want. But through standardization, through innovation, through demonstration, we can make a big impact in this space. So don't think about AVs and transport. Think about this as the next mobile computing platform. Think about the things that have happened before and how big a change it was, and think really big when you think about disrupting this network. So anyway, final plug for us. We believe in open platforms. We believe in solving really, really tough problems. We're building a diverse and innovative team. We're headquartered down in Campbell. I know, it's exciting, Campbell. But if you've never been down there, you can actually afford an apartment, so it's really cool. And we're working with a number of companies, both big and small, embedding our technology, but ultimately trying to get to a point where this platform that we see can come to scale, and we can start building some of these interesting businesses on top of that. Thank you very much for your time.